Warm welcome. Good morning. Thank you all for coming and joining us. Fran, if we end up without enough seats, do we have a few back there that we can? Yeah, okay, good. It's suddenly filling up, which is not a surprise given our speaker. Good morning and welcome. It is my great privilege and pleasure to welcome and introduce Professor Nadine Panayot. Professor Panayot is an archaeologist currently serving as curator of the Archaeological Museum and associate professor of practice at the American University of Beirut, also known as AUB. A graduate of Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne, she specializes in the heritage of the classical Mediterranean with over 3 decades of fieldwork across Lebanon and Southwest Asia. Her work focuses on the intersection of archaeology, cultural preservation with a growing emphasis on digital technologies, and community engagement. Previously, Professor Panayot chaired the Archaeology and Museology Department at the University of Balamand in Lebanon, where she established a master's program in museum studies and cultural heritage management and co-founded the Ethnographic Museum. She has curated numerous exhibitions and interdisciplinary events, both locally and internationally, emphasizing inclusive practices, accessibility, and cross-cultural dialogue. Following the 2020 Beirut port explosion, she led the restoration of AUB's shattered glass collection, recognized as a runner-up for the prestigious Nigel Williams Conservation Award in 2023. A committed advocate for community-led conservation, Professor Panayot directs the Hima Anfe Reserve on the Lebanese coast near Tripoli and serves on several scientific and advisory boards. A member of ICOM, the International Council of Museums, since 1992, she has held leadership roles on national and regional committees and currently presides over the working committee of the UNESCO National Commission, while also serving on the scientific committee of ALIF, the International Alliance for Protection of Heritage. In 2023, she was named Chevalier des Arts et Lettres by the French Ministry of Culture. Through her teaching, curating, and policy work, Professor Panayot positions museums and heritage sites as agents of resilience, healing, and social cohesion. Her work in every area in which she focuses is innovative, thoughtful, creative, and immensely impactful. She is a brilliant colleague for whom I have the utmost respect and admiration, so it is a very, very special honor to have her here with us at the Met. This morning, Professor Panayot will share with us her thoughts on museums, and I quote, as bridges between past and present, reaffirming heritage as a living, evolving force rather than a relic of history, and ensuring both continuity and connection across cultures and time. So now please join me in warmly welcoming Professor Panayot to the podium to give her presentation on Heritage DNA, Resilience at the American University of Beirut Archaeological Museum. Nadine.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim Benzel. And my thanks as well to the entire Met team for this generous invitation, and to the AUB New York Debus Center for facilitating my visit, organizing it. You've done an amazing job. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I'm truly humbled, Kim, by your words. To share a few stories, actually, from the American University of Beirut Archaeological Museum, stories that mirror the wider story of AUB and of Lebanon, one of endurance, learning, and hope. I will begin by introducing the museum and the unlikely ways in which it has grown and persisted in a turbulent region, Then I will share the journey of our once shattered glass vessels, small objects that carry a profound message of human commitment, perseverance, and solidarity, and show how these minute shards gave rise to innovation, research, and teaching projects. And finally, I will speak about the recent bombings in Beirut and how the museum implemented an emergency plan to basically protect our collections. So the AUB Archaeological Museum is the third oldest regional museum in the Eastern Mediterranean, after Cairo and Constantinople. The collection grew around a nucleus consisting of 135 Cypriot artifacts donated in 1865 to what used to be called the Syrian Protestant College, later the American University of Beirut, by the American Council in Cyprus, General Luigi Palma di Cesnola, someone you are very familiar with at the Met and someone we talked about extensively all day yesterday. So after that first donation, it continued to expand steadily from several gifts and donations. Later, and before World War I, curators were given the means to gradually add new acquisitions. Post Hall was built in 1902 as a science building. It originally housed collections in natural sciences, geology, and archaeology. Like many university museums, its primary purpose was educational. In other words, the broader and more diverse the collection, the richer the teaching experience. I will skip my earliest predecessors, who were not archaeologists, but rather medical doctors and biologists turned into curators. But I will start with Mrs. Mary Bliss Dodge, the wife of President Dodge, who took charge of the museum at a very difficult time when there was no funding for a new curator. As World War II approached, she packed the museum collections and moved them to a safer place. The museum's galleries were then used as stores for food supplies throughout the war and remained closed until 1948. Mrs. Darcy Mackay, who was assistant keeper at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford for 3 years during World War II, was appointed curator of the AUB Museum in 1948. Her major achievement was to unpack the museum collection in time for the UNESCO meeting in Beirut in November 1948. Yes, this is the important role that Beirut used to play back then, a really center for culture. 1956, Dr. Dimitri Baramki, a Palestinian professor of archaeology, renovated Post Hall and dedicated the ground floor to the archaeological collection. However, acquisition processes changed with evolving scientific methodologies. In the mid-1950s, Baramki introduced archaeological excavations as a mandatory internship for all archaeology AUB students. He started the excavations at Tel el-Ghassil, a site in the Bekaa, where AUB holds its farms, and later wrote, "The museum will grow more from artifacts coming from such excavations rather than from other sources, and the scientific value of the collection will thus be greatly enhanced." He was a man of vision. Appointed in the mid-1970s, Dr. Leila Badr faced the immense challenge of reviving the museum amid the Lebanese Civil War, or so-called Lebanese Civil War. She founded the Society of the Friends of the AUB Museum, a great asset to the museum. In the 1980s, she expanded public engagement with monthly lectures, exhibitions, children's programs, and educational trips throughout the war. But she also had her share of survival stories in the 1980s, with the direct shelling of the campus and museum, the assassination of President Malcolm Kerr as he walked out of the museum, and the car bomb that destroyed the administration building, College Hall, in March 1991, not too far from the museum itself. Nevertheless, In 2006, and in collaboration with the Society of the Friends of the Museum and with the support of the Joukowsky Family Foundation, Bedr undertook the renovation of the museum and expanded its exhibition space with this mezzanine that you see on the right bottom of the screen. And this is how spotless the museum looked when she resigned in the summer of 2020 after 45 years of service. Little did she know that Beirut would soon turn into a crime scene, staging the most powerful non-nuclear explosion in history. Little did we know that Lebanon would be going through its worst financial crisis since its creation, and little did we know that the world was about to face a total shutdown due to the pandemic. This was my baptism of fire, so to speak, that kick-started my tenure as curator of the AUB Archaeological Museum on September 1st, 2020, just weeks after the Beirut port explosion. The building had suffered structural damage, all doors and windows shattered, but the greatest loss was a display case containing 74 glass artifacts, ranging from the Roman period all the way to the medieval period. A few days after the blast, before I had even taken office, Dr. Zena Kling-Hope, former curator of the Modern Middle East at the British Museum, called to offer help on behalf of Hartwig Fischer, former director of the British Museum. That call gave me hope and marked the beginning of our conversations with the British Museum. In the meantime, I assembled a first aid rescue team of my former students from the Museum Studies and Cultural Heritage Management program. We volunteered across Beirut, assisting all 8 damaged museums, though only AUB and Sursok had suffered losses to their collections. We prepared a materials assessment and shared it with the Institut National du Patrimoine, INP, in Paris, which organized 2 recovery missions at my request, one for the AUB Museum focused on glass, and another for Sursok Museum focused on paper, both funded by ALIF, the International Alliance for the Protection of Heritage. And thanks to the agility of ALIF, Claire Cuillobert, a glass expert from the INP, arrived in Beirut on September 4, in other words, 3 days after I started my tenure, and began the recovery phase with the support of the museum team and the first aid rescue team. Following this mission, the condition report revealed that only around 15 items were possibly restorable. Most, however, would remain beyond restoration, even though their body shards were recovered and their identity confirmed through inventory and photographic records. For a full year after that initial recovery phase, the AUB Museum team pursued the puzzle work, in other words, identifying and matching broken shards from each vessel. In June and July 2021, 2 INP experts, funded again by ALIV, pieced together hundreds of glass fragments. 10 glass vessels were finally successfully restored. An experience that inspired me to create a new field course on glass recovery and conservation for the Department of History and Archaeology. Simultaneously, and in collaboration with the AUB Faculty of Engineering and Architecture, Professor Daniel Asmar and I co-founded the Digital Cultural Heritage Center. We call it the DITCH. From this platform, we pioneered 3D reconstructions of shattered vessels, producing 3D printed clones that gave broken fragments a second life. In her AI-driven conservation master thesis, student Rabab Kautharani implemented the multi-step process illustrated in the video to virtually reconstruct glass objects. From shattered glass to beacons of hope, 3D crystal clones with their QR code told the story of Beirut at the AUB New York fundraiser in 2022. And you see here our president, standing and giving a speech during the fundraiser. And on every table, the center table was actually one of those crystals with a QR code that told our story. So out of the crisis came another rare scientific opportunity. The breakage of these ancient vessels allowed us to study their chemistry in ways normally impossible with intact objects. Together with the AUB physics professor Malik Tabal, the Cyprus Institute, the British Museum, and UCL, we set out to explore what these artifacts were truly made of and where they came from. Using a combination of XRF, SEM, Raman, and other technologies, we traced their elemental and surface composition in detail. The results revealed over 50 trace elements, clear signs of recycling, and ultimately confirmed their Levantine origin, filling in the gaps of provenance that many 19th century museum collections still lack to this day. All these efforts came together in January 2022 with an international workshop through shattered glass. It brought researchers and conservators together around four main themes: the archaeology and typology of glass, its restoration, its material science, and the use of computer vision for digital reconstruction. Through this, the museum asserted itself as a living research hub. The story of our glass reached far beyond our walls. It was featured in the United Nations Year of Glass book, Japanese newspapers, the New Scientist magazine, and across several academic journals. Dialogue generated further communication, and with it came a completely unexpected mission. Stephen Koo, thank you, Stephen, for being here. He's right here with us today. Recently retired chief conservator at the Corning Museum of Glass in New York, volunteered his time and expertise. Working alongside Claire Kiobert at the AUB Museum, he helped restore 6 glass artifacts, conducted an intensive hands-on course on glass conservation, and joined the Through Shattered Glass workshop. A gesture of solidarity that left a lasting mark on our team. We took advantage, obviously, of the workshop in the presence of Claire and Stephen on campus to organize a children's program event titled Glass Through the Ages. The British Museum pursued conversations for over 18 months, then offered to ship 8 vessels suitable for transportation, though completely broken, to be restored at the BM lab. So the BM also graciously invited Aimé Bourazet, an AUB Museum assistant, to their lab for 3 months of training. This brought the total of restored vessels to 26 out of 74. So the 8 restored glass vessels were exhibited in room 3 at the entrance of the British Museum. I co-curated the exhibition with Dr. James Fraser, former curator for the ancient Levant and Anatolia, and Dr. Zena Klinkhope, former curator for the modern Middle East, to tell the story of the AUB glass recovery to a global audience. The exhibition was on display from August to October 2022. According to British Museum Analytics, after 3 months, the exhibition set new records for attendance, visitor engagement, and media coverage. As one reviewer noted, it's a powerful story of common humanity. The exhibition also shed light on the often unseen conservation work in museums and their role as active global participants in cultural recovery. And the 2023 Nigel Williams Runner-Up Prize was awarded to the Archaeological Museum at the American University of Beirut and to the British Museum for the Shattered Glass of Beirut project. The prize is in recognition of outstanding professional or academic projects focusing on the interventive conservation. In May 2023, and celebrating the International Museum Day, the vessels were reunited and unveiled in a new permanent display at the AUB Museum in the very spot where they had been shattered 3 years earlier. Titled Shattered and Restored, the exhibition showcased 26 reconstructed vessels alongside a poignant section, The Archaeology of Absence, which honored the 46 lost pieces. Like funerary stones, they are labels evoking the memory of the victims through fragments, photographs, and 3D prints. And to honor and thank all our partners, I released this short movie.
These artifacts used to tell stories of banquets during the Roman period, faith during the Byzantine period, and light during the Islamic periods. They told stories of music, poetry, and theater being recited and beauty celebrated. They told stories of human genius through education and culture. They survived civilizations that used them with respect. They survived earthquakes, tsunamis, and wars for over 2,000 years, recounting our roots and origins. Until August 4, 2020, when they were all gone, shattered in thousands of pieces, like our hearts and souls. But 3 years later, we bring them back to life again. What seemed like an impossible task was made possible by painstakingly sifting through thousands of glass shards, sorted, forensically identified, and recovered with hard work, perseverance, dedication, and above all, teamwork. Breathless, exhausted, and crippled, they stand tall again, head high. Their scars will tell new stories. They will tell stories of the deceased, the injured, the orphans, the homeless. They will tell a story of greed, ignorance, arrogance, corruption, and cynicism. They will bear witness to the guilt of the culprits of this atrocity, and they will keep telling that story for another 2,000 years if necessary, until they are held accountable. You see, we still can't mourn, forget, or forgive until such a date. Mankind has acquired the skill to destroy in a fraction of a second what took them years to build or accomplish. In a broken city, repeatedly injured, each one struggles to emerge from his fractured life and in his own unique way seeks to transcend chaos and collapse, to start again, rising from his own shattered past into his present. There was kindness and empathy, a phone call, and with it came hope. From this first communication, brilliant collaborative work would evolve. Hence, out of these thousands of minute shards, thanks to dialogue and outstanding teamwork, came repair and restitution, drawn from human care and solidarity. Communication generated further knowledge, and with it came a completely unexpected balm to our hearts. They will also tell our stories, the story of our determination to uphold education, culture, and heritage as the main assets of the Lebanese people, to consider knowledge as the only sacred duty of growing generations. The story of our unwavering commitment to take a leap of faith beyond hate, fear, and despair, and pursue a journey of commitment, perseverance, and repair, one broken piece at a time.
I really wish our story ended there. But in October 2023, just after renewing our showcases, war broke out in Gaza. Its repercussions reached Beirut. Demonstrations erupted outside the museum, and handmade explosives were thrown over the fence. Once again, I had to remove the glass artifacts and empty the gallery. In response, I invited contemporary artists to share their voices in times of war, leading to Reem El-Jundi's exhibition, which transformed the space into a reflection on resistance and creation amid conflict. Titled Naked Truth, the exhibition echoed the city's wounds and the women who endured them. Meanwhile, the story of the restored glass artifacts took on a life of its own, traveling far beyond Beirut. They were featured at the National Museum of Beijing in China. Their 3D reconstructions celebrated as a model of conservation best practice. From these minute shards emerged a wave of innovation. We founded the Ditch, merging conservation with technology, from the digital archiving of collections to an interactive Phoenician sea route display that will be inaugurated in January, a 3D model of the archaeological site of Enfe, preserved the site before its vandalism, the recent bombings, vandalism, fragile cuneiform tablets were digitized and secured during the recent bombings, and 7 sites along the Lebanon Mountain Trail were documented for conservation, duplicating the Enfe project. Now the project grows into a digital atlas of Lebanon's heritage. From fragments of glass to digital horizons, these efforts transform into renewal, revealing how museums can heal, connect, and imagine the future. Still, the story does not end there. In October 2024, the bombings against Lebanon began. Beirut was caught in the crossfire, with explosions drawing closer each day. I was compelled to revise and activate the museum's emergency plan to safeguard the staff and the collections. Access soon became nearly impossible, so I implemented a rotating team schedule to keep a presence on site. With a few options available, yet grounded in AUB's mission of social responsibility, every action we took carried our commitment to the museum and its community. Visible barriers to shield the museum's windows would have caused panic, and the basements were reserved for students and staff. So I reverted to securing a space in our conference hall and improvised a bunker, a secure space to safeguard a selection of the museum's most significant objects, representing our story from prehistory to the Ottoman era. The priority pieces were packed and sheltered in storage boxes. Each member of the team took part in working in rotation. At the same time, I was teaching a new course designed to be immersive within the museum, exploring the birth of ancient civilizations in the Eastern Mediterranean. But when the bombings began, I had to reimagine the entire course transforming it into a hybrid format taught both on-site and online for students unable to leave their homes. That was challenging, yet it made me realize the critical importance of adaptability and preparedness in heritage management during times of crisis. Though improvised in parts, the plan now stands as a model for future emergency strategies, especially where infrastructure and resources are limited. In the face of growing threats and the painful memory of the Beirut port explosion, the bunker, nicknamed this time Mini M, or Mini Museum, came into being. In an Armageddon scenario where the building would collapse, this bunker would remain as a living memory of what this museum once was, a DNA code preserved in concrete. This Mini-M has once again been recognized as best practice and will be showcased and replicated at the Louvre Abu Dhabi in March 2026. I have also been invited by UNESCO to teach 3 seminars for colleagues in Ukraine, and by the World Monument Fund and the Smithsonian to lead a capacity building program in Iraq that will help shape the new museography of the Mosul Museum. What you see here is our bunker during the holidays. Our volunteering students placed a tiny Christmas tree on top, a quiet act of defiance. They told us how, even in wartime, the museum's open doors restored a sense of normalcy. In that moment, we realized we weren't only protecting objects. We were protecting our shared heritage DNA, what binds us, steadies us, and helps us heal. Crises pushed us to innovate and reimagine our role, and it revealed something essential. Museums are not luxuries. They are anchors, spaces that educate, connect, soothe, and today are even prescribed by doctors as places that heal. When everything else fails, museums can still hold people together, offering continuity, dignity, and hope. And I thank you for your attention.